Peter Cook on Capitol Hill now with Republican Senator Richard Shelby, the ranking member of the Banking Committee. Peter.
Well, Lori, thanks very much. I am joined by Senator Shelby, the Republican from Alabama, someone who's been opposed to a good portion of this bill for quite a long time, and I imagine that hasn't changed all that much with what happened in the House last night.
It absolutely has not changed. You know, years ago, I thought we were going to get us a solid, substantive, bipartisan bill, but that was not to be. And I believe this bill, there are a few good things in this bill, but there's so many bad things in this bill. I would hope that 60 people would not vote for it in the Senate.
Well, the pressure's on a handful of Republicans. Tell me from the Republican perspective, can you keep the troops in line?
Well, that's an excellent question. If we were to be able to keep the troops in line, in other words, if all the Republicans voted no on this conference report, it wouldn't pass. And I don't know. I hadn't counted the whip. I'm not the whip counter, but I'm doubtful. I believe that there probably some deals were cut to make some inducement for a few Republicans to jump ship.
But there is this congressional recess here. I mean, Democrats, you can tell they're fearful that something's going to happen during this recess. They would rather have gotten this done before this recess.
Oh, absolutely, because you got 4th of July recess. We come back in, what, 10 days or so. The American people are going to have a chance to look at this bill in the whole context of what it does and what it doesn't do, and it's going to be short, as Dr. Volcker said, as others have said. There was a great article in the Wall Street Journal by Dr. Taylor from Stanford University today, a well-respected economist, that this is not a good bill.
What is the one thing in this bill that bothers you the most? As you said, there are a couple things in here you like, but for the most part you don't like it. What's the single biggest thing?
Well, the single biggest thing is the consumer agency with no real cap on it. In other words, no real veto by the prudential regulators. I think that's big. That's what Fannie and Freddie had, 2 regulators. Now a lot of the banks are going to have 2 regulators. I think it's mischief and trouble down the road.
This bill also gives a lot of power to regulators, not just this new Consumer Financial Protection Agency, but the Fed gets new responsibilities. All the bank regulators get new responsibilities. Is that a wise move given the role regulators played during the crisis?
Well, excellent question again, Peter. There was probably not a lot of opportunity to change a lot of things like this other than create new regulators, new ones. But you're right, the Fed gets more power, the other regulators get more power. My question to them, what have they learned? If they've learned something, that's one thing. But sometimes you can't teach an old dog new tricks.
The Democrats, and you heard this on the Senate floor, was in the House debate last night. They insist Republicans are standing in the way of this. You all are in favor of the status quo, and that's not acceptable.
No, we're not in favor of the status quo. I think a lot of this stuff that the Democrats are pushing is the status quo, enhancing the regulators who didn't do their job on the last debacle.
All right, let me ask you about a couple of the provisions here. What about derivatives? Oversight of the over-the-counter derivatives market. Surely you've got to believe that's a good idea at this point.
I think it's a good idea, but I believe that there should have been more leeway for end users, not people that gamble like a casino, but people who use them every day to manage risk.
The Volcker rule, the ban on proprietary trading, good idea or bad?
Well, I think overall it's a good idea. I used to call it a concept, but it's watered down right now, and I don't know where it'll go.
What about the Fed? And again, you've had criticism of the Fed and its handling of the financial crisis. There are new oversight. There's new oversight for the Fed, these audits of their emergency lending practices. Does that go far enough? Even at Bloomberg today, we have an exclusive story out today examining the question about some of the assets the Fed took on from the rescue of Bear Stearns. Questions about really how investment grade some of those assets were. Your thoughts about that and again, the audit side of this?
Well, first, you're talking about the balance sheet of the Fed. They got over $2 trillion, questionable securities now. They've got to deleverage the Fed because that is a lot of debt, you know, they've taken on. Secondly, and I'm going to ask this question again, the real question is this bill will give a lot of power to more regulators, especially the Fed. Has the Fed learned anything? If they haven't, then we're worse off than we were.
You've got 3 Fed nominees coming up in front of the Banking Committee when you come back from the recess. They can have any problem there?
Well, I will be at the hearings, and I won't be the only one, but I'm sure they will have a lot of questions, serious, substantive questions.
Do you have questions, again, just looking right now at the economic situation, with the Fed's handling of the economy right now? There's some looking at what's happening in the markets right now, questions about the recovery. and suggest maybe the Fed should get back in, maybe more quantitative easing here, more purchases of mortgage-backed securities. What do you make of that? Would you be upset if the Fed steps in again?
Well, I would think that the Fed has got a lot on its balance sheet right now, $2 trillion. If they keep adding more, it's more and more debt. It takes things out of the market. But I think that we're in I hope we don't go into a double-dip recession, but we're going to be in a prolonged economic slump, I'm afraid.
Your confidence in Ben Bernanke right now, and you had problems with him when it came up for his confirmation?
Let's hope that he's learned something.
All right, let me switch gears with you and ask you a little bit about what's happening in the Gulf Coast as well. Of course, your home state of Alabama, one of the states in the line of fire right now. How worried are you about the situation right now, and is Alabama getting the resources, the help it needs, not only from BP, but from the federal government?
Well, we never get enough resources. I've been down to the Gulf twice. I went out to the where the rig blew up once with the Coast Guard a week or so ago. I was down on the beaches meeting with the fishermen and small business. I was in the Dolphin Island with the marine biologists. So we've got a real acute situation, and it's going to get worse and worse if we don't stop the hemorrhaging. BP's got to stop the hemorrhaging. I think they're working frantically to do this. If we can do this, I think we'll clean it up, over time. But if it keeps hemorrhaging, we don't know how bad it'll get.
Deepwater drilling in the Gulf. Can Richard Shelby support further deepwater drilling in the Gulf?
Absolutely. But I think that we should not ever drill unless you got proper oversight by the minerals management and others. BP probably could have prevented this. They probably made some shortcuts. This is what I've learned. Others haven't. We've got thousands of wells in the Gulf, and we hadn't caused any problem. I hope we've learned a lot. One, don't take shortcuts.
All right, Senator Richard Shelby, as always, appreciate the time. Have a good recess. We'll be following up, of course, when the Senate comes back after this July 4th recess. Lori, we'll send it back to you.